In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut out a person from a background and add a solid color studio background like a seamless paper backdrop behind someone. We're going to keep the background simple because in this video, I want to focus on making the detailed selection around the body and doing a good mask cutting job. So a mask will allow us to basically erase the background and go back and fine tune it if we don't do a good job or we want to refine it later. It's better than using the erase tool or cutting and pasting to a new layer. And in this video, also, I'm going to show you different methods to make a selection, which will then turn into a mask. So let's zoom in and look at what we're working with here. We've got the easy parts of the image, which are the hard edges, right? The body, the shirt, the tutu, and the normal lines of the body. Those are easy to cut out. We can do those semi-manually, or we can do them automatically and then fine tune them with a brush. The hard part is going to be the hair and the feathers up here. Now, the thing that does make this easier is that we've got very good contrast of colors. So this feather is obviously yellow. This feather is obviously purple. Her hair is a bit darker than the background. So that's going to help Photoshop see, because it sees in terms of colors and values, it's going to help it see what we want and what we don't want. And we're going to try to do it as much automatically as we can so we're not doing a bunch of manual brushing and tedious work. So let's get started. Let's do the easy stuff first. So the first step you want to do when you are cutting someone out of a background, in my opinion, and this works for about 80 or 90% of images, is use the select subject. So go to your select menu up here and go to subject. That's going to take a few seconds to think about it. Photoshop is making an estimation of what the subject is and what the subject isn't. And it's really great. It saves me so much time. But it's not always perfect. See, it followed this line on the texture of the wood, and I thought that that was part of the leg because they're pretty close in value. I can see, how it went wrong there. Up here did a good job because, again, the contrast was good. Missed a little bit of the tutu there. That's super easy to fix. We'll fix that with a brush tool. It even got the hole in the middle of the arm and the body, so that's nice. But as we go up, here's where it gets a little bit fuzzier. So it gets some of the hair, but not the wispy, thin hair that is showing up basically partially transparent because it's blurry and, this image is not super high resolution. This is a phone picture. It's a decent phone picture, but even phones will struggle getting, sharp detail like that. And then it got the doorknob as part of her head because they were overlapping. And of course, the feathers are probably the worst part. But hey, look at this. We got about 80% of our work done by automatic means, and I like that. So let's use the selection and let's fine tune it a little bit. I am going to zoom in to see just this part of her body. Now let's get to a selection tool. It can be any selection tool because when we go to a selection tool, it's going to give us options up here that we don't see right now. Why? Because right now my tool is the zoom tool. So we have zoom options. So let's hit just the letter W to get us, in my case, it gets me to my quick selection tool, which is really helpful. I'm not really going to use it right now, but it does give us these selection options up here. So let's click select and mask. That brings up this properties dialog over here, which gives us a lot of options to fine tune it, again, automatically with these sliders over here. So for me personally, I like to do overlay option on this drop down so that I can see, red is, I think, not selected. And then what is not red is going to be inside of our selection, right? Her. We're going to mask out the background. But there's a bunch of other options here depending on what you like. Moving it down, of course, we got how opaque that overlay is to show us. Again, it's just for visual reference. I have object aware selected. Now we've got some sliders here. Radius, I really don't know how to put this into words, what radius is doing. But when you zoom in, you can see it's kind of looking for, I guess, different radius sizes of detail. And it's clinging onto those or skipping over them. So I do usually raise this up a little bit from 0, anywhere between 2 and maybe 4 pixels. Smart Radius also gives a little bit more variety depending on the different size of details. Smoothing will basically smooth out the selection. So let's say you've got a really hard, 90-degree turn, one of your selection edges. It's going to, round that out. So I put that up a little bit, but not a lot. Feather does exactly what, you think it does if you know what feather is. It's basically blurring the selection. So look, as I raise this feather up, it's non-discriminately blurring the selection edge to, extremely soft. So that's 29, that's almost 28 pixels worth of feather. Half that is around, well, on the slider, 4 pixels, 0 pixels is no feather. So it might be a harsh edge and that's what you get. But if you raise the feather, it's just going to soften it a little bit. So you might want to add, maybe two pixels of blur just to make that edge softer. And contrast will grab what the selection already had, which is the transformation from not selected to selected, and it's going to basically add contrast to that. So if you do have soft edges generated by the subject select tool we used earlier, if you up the contrast, it'll turn those into sharp. So this basically unblurs your selection. It kind of undoes what feather does. Shift edge will shift it inwards or outwards. Look at that. So that's really helpful. Sometimes you get a selection and it looks like this. You get these background, in this case, white edges, because that's what's behind her, the door or the wall. And that doesn't look great. So one way to fix that is if you do have that, slide your edge inwards, or if you're already at 0, which is what the default is in the middle, you can slide it in even more to get rid of any background bleeding or leaking into your subject. If you go too far, I'm cutting off the edges of everything, which is not good either. So you do want the edge, but you don't want the edge to be blurring or bleeding with the background. So I'm just going to leave that at 0 because I feel like it did get the edges pretty good. And now that we're done with those sliders, we can click OK. And now we've got the marching ants, which are these little guys marching around the edges of the body. That is our selection around her. So we can do a lot of stuff with that selection. We can edit within that selection. We can, brush only within that selection. We can cut it, paste it to a new layer, a lot of things we can do. But in this case, we're going to click the Create Mask button down here. It's the rectangle with the circle. And when you have any shape, and when you have any kind of selection already made, it'll turn that selection into a mask, which is really handy. And there we go. So I just clicked on that rectangle button and boom, my selection is gone, but it's turned into this mask, which is this black and white kind of copy of the image over here. So let me alt click on this mask over here. Or if you option click on Mac, you'll get this. So this is what our mask is. The mask is just a black and white data layer that is applied to your RGB normal image layer. And whatever is white is opaque or present. Whatever is black is transparent or invisible. So you can say this in your head: black will hide and white will reveal. Okay, white is yes, you can see it, black is no. So if I click on my mask layer, or my layer mask actually, use my brush tool, and if I use a black color, what do you think is going to happen? Remember, black is no, right? So if I paint over this, look, she's gone. I just added this black streak and it made that part of her body disappear. So let me undo that. Now, if I select the layer mask again, you got to click on it, get those little white corners. And with my brush tool, I'm going to press X to invert my color. Now, instead of painting black onto my mask, I'm going to paint white. What is going to happen? The opposite. Look, now I'm revealing, right? I'm not hiding, but I'm revealing the background behind her. And, depending on the background, this might be kind of a cute, with a cool brush with some texture, this might be a nice effect. Kind of like a brushed in background and then solid color around her. I don't know. You just be creative with that. But I'm revealing the background behind her, and this is what my mask looks like now. All that hard work I just did is destroyed because I painted white over it. So let's undo. Control Z. Control Z. There we go. Here's our mask that Photoshop gave us. It's got some soft edges, which is good. We can work with that. And let's start tweaking this, and then we will refine the hair and the feather as best as we can. So first of all, I got to get rid of this doorknob. It's probably driving some of you crazy. So select your layer mask, use your brush tool, which is letter B. Make sure you've got the color black selected. You can click on this top layer, drag it anywhere on the bottom. If it's black, you can also hit letter D, which defaults to white on black, and then X to invert that to make it black on top of white. This background square is kind of a thing of the past of the old Photoshop days. It's not really used for anything anymore. So just pay attention to the top square, the foreground color, not the background. Okay, so we got a black brush. Now we can paint over. Now look at this. As I get closer to her head, it's getting some really harsh edges. See that? How it's just a cutoff? We might not want to do that so harshly. So go back, and I'm going to undo that. Go back to brush and right click. And assuming you're using the Photoshop round, kind of circle brush, you can change how hard the edge is. So I'm going to put this at 50%. Now look, the edge is blurry. You can very carefully just kind of edge our way in to closer to her head, and that looks great. No one will know that I erased something behind her head. All right, now we do need to fix these little spots down here. So her ankle is going up under the yellow, and then this is actually her knee, which is coming down from here. She's doing a super cute little girly pose, really rocking that pose. Good job, little girl. I don't know her name. My friend's daughter, by the way. And yes, I do have permission to use this picture. So I'm going to do some more brushing, but look, this is too big. So we're going to size it down with the size. I'm going to right click to get your brush options. There we go. That's a smaller size. And our edges, let's make it a little bit softer. So that means less hardness. We're around 33%. There we go. So I'm using a stylus. So this is actually, relatively easy. It's not going to say it's easy, but it's easier than using a mouse. Now, if you find yourself doing a lot of composite work, then definitely get a stylus like a Wacom or a Huion. All right, here's a keyboard shortcut to make things easier. Your brackets left and right will size your brush up and down. So I'm going to size it down a little bit and draw along this yellow. If this is really tedious for you, which it is, I'm going to show you another trick. Click one time at the starting point of your line, because we're going to draw a straight line. So when click down here, hold shift and do another click on the top or the end point of your line. See that? Think of a line from geometry days connecting a ray between point A and point B. So click on point A, hold shift, click on point B, and boom, it connects the dots and makes a straight line. We're going to do it again here. I'm going to let go. That's my point A, hold shift, and click down here at point B, straight line down that little skirt piece. Awesome. So that saved me some more time, right? I'm all about saving time. Time is money. There we go. I switched my color to white, which means I can paint back in. So look, her toes are gone. So if I switch back to my white color, I should be able to paint back in some of the pieces that were erased. Now it's really hard to kind of guess, like what is below here? I don't know. Should I just do real messy, and then paint this out? Or what can we do about that? Well, I'm going to show you a trick for that. Yes, I have a trick for everything. I'm going to right click on my empty space of the layer and go to duplicate layer. You can also do Control J. Now I've got two of the same layer, same mask. On the bottom one, we're going to right click on the mask and delete layer mask. So now we've got a bottom layer of everything, right? And the top layer with the mask applied. Now select your bottom layer, go to adjustment layers, add a hue and saturation, turn on colorize and turn up saturation and pick a really obnoxious color that's not in this scene. I'm gonna go with bright pink. Now what I just did is I'm adding a hue and saturation layer, which is only affecting what's below it, right? So what's below this? The layer with everything on it. Now what's on top of here is not going to be affected. So with this layer is on top, it's the girl with the mask applied. So it's cutting out the background. So she's not being colorized, but the layer below it, which is this one, layer 0, is being colorized to pink because of this adjustment layer. If I turn it on and off, we can see what it's doing. All right, so why did I just do this? So that I can see the pixels that belong in the top layer. So let's go back to our mask, brush tool, black, and I can see that she's actually curling her toes. So there's no toes here, or they're just obscured by the strap. But I can see the side of her sandal here. It needs to be in there. So go switch to your white color, paint that back in, paint, a little bit of the yellow strap there. Her heel is also kind of disappearing. There we go, cool. And down here, the sole of her shoe is also being masked out. Some of the strap, some of that strap, a little bit of the edge, and the buckle piece right here. And so, of course, it's really up to you how detailed you want to get, but the human eye usually will notice when things are suddenly chopped off. So it's better to do your due diligence, include everything that should be there. Don't cut off any clothing or body parts because it looks weird. Make sure it's all painted in. There we go. So I'm painting white over the areas that need to be visible. Now here's some pink edging. I think we can leave that how that is. This one might need to be included. So if you want to include that, use the brush, which is B, white. Make sure that you always have the mask selected. Don't paint onto your layer. If you get this, that's because you're painting white onto your actual layer of the girl. Undo. Click on the mask so that you got the white corners. Then you can paint away. And I'm just going to very carefully trace along the edge, paint that in. Now, why is this all kind of this edge getting kind of pink and soft? It's because the mask is soft. Look at that. There's no hard edges. A hard edge would be that. See those edges, pixels, harsh. This is nice and blurry. The mask is, which is more like this, or maybe more like that. So there's another trick for that. I'm just full of tricks. We're going to use contrast to sharpen the mask. Because when we sharpen the mask, it's going to get more detail and it's just going to look better. So let me find an area where we're really going to see it affected. I guess over here we'll see it the most. Because we got this side of the tutu. So with the mask selected, press Control L. And this is our levels. We don't really see much because honestly, the mask is only pure black and pure white. So there's no values really in there, except for a teeny tiny slope on either side. So if we bring up the black, we're making our mask what? Blacker, which means what? Less is visible. We're hiding more. We go the opposite. If we make it brighter by dragging the right point to the left, now the mask is getting brighter, which means more is being revealed. And we can see it's actually going outside her skin, outside her body. So let's brighten it up a little bit and also darken it a little bit. We're just adding contrast to that mask. And just trust me, it cleans up a lot of mask problems. I say that with experience of masking for many years. That's one of the things I regularly do when I do composites. Is a little bit of contrast on that mask. Okay, so we're pretty good. Oh, I forgot this little chunk of her tutu. So B for brush, make sure it's white. Make sure your mask is selected, and then you're ready to paint. Always check those two things. Check your brush color, and then check what you are actually going to be painting on. What layer is selected. All right, I've been putting it off, but let's get to this hair. Let's see if we can get this hair included here. So we're going to turn off our hue saturation. I'm going to click on the bottom layer, and I'm going to use another selection tool to hopefully automatically select those darker pixels and not select the brighter ones. So go up to select, go to color range, and now we can do sampled colors, which is this top option here, which means you can click on a color. So look, if I click on her yellow shirt, look at that. All the yellow. This is a really small preview. I don't know why it's so tiny. They don't let you enhance it for some reason. And if I click on her shadowy skin tone, it gets all the browns, her bright skin tone with her cheeks. And you can tweak how sensitive Photoshop is by increasing the fuzziness, which is a really vague term. Again, I love Photoshop, but I got a lot of complaints about it too. Sometimes it's the terminology. Other times it's the fact that they haven't updated certain things in 20 years, but I have another video on that already. So let's grab the kind of medium brightness of her hair, which is right around there. Let's see. I think that might do it. It's selecting less. If our fuzziness is up high, it grabs a lot of extra stuff. But we want our fuzziness down. So let's try 30 for our fuzziness. Let's see how it does. I'm going to click OK. And it's grabbing some of the hair pixels. So let's paint back in with this selection. So I have a selection selected, right? I have a selection here in front of me. I see the marching ants. With my brush tool, I can paint, and it'll only paint inside that selection, which is pretty cool. With the color white on our brush and mask selected, I can paint in on top of the selection, but look, it's already in there. Nothing's happening because I already have this part selected. So I need to make it more fuzzy. Okay, so click on our image layer, select, color range, and it has the same color selected already. I'm not going to resample. I'm just going to increase my fuzziness to about twice what it was. Okay, a little bit more. Let's try 83. Let's see what that grabs. Okay, it's grabbing more, right? It's a larger selection. Now, if I paint white in there, yeah, still nothing's really happening because I already have these pixels included in my mask. You can see it right there. It's already there. So nothing new is happening yet. But as we get fuzzier, or if we resample these colors of our hair, it might start to do a better job. So I'm actually going to sample this really faint brown color. Let's see if I can grab anything there. So select, color range, and with my eyedropper, I'm going to click on this little faint hair here. You can also hold shift and it'll grab, additional color ranges. Okay, with my fuzziness up around almost 100. Oh, look at that. We're getting the area where her hair is, but I think it's grabbing too much. I think this is too big of a selection. Let's see. If I paint white, yeah, it's including the background. So I think we're good. We just need to decrease our fuzziness. So deselect, which is Control D. Do it over again. Color range, fuzziness from 97. Let's try 50. Oh, that's not enough. Let's go back up. Maybe 75. And every image is so different. There is no equation for this. There's no action I can make to make your hair selection perfect. Don't buy an action that says it's a solution to all your hair problems. That's just a lie. Because every image is so different, especially when you're working with a cell phone picture. Let's try 85. Not quite there yet. All right, so I'm going to resample this hair color, and I'm going to hold shift and click a few times right in there, and I'm going to put my fuzziness to around 80. Let's try 80. Click OK. We're still getting kind of a blobby chunk of, hair selection. Let's try that again. Hair range, click on the same spot. Put this down to maybe 50 fuzziness. All right, that's a little better. That's a little bit sharper, right? So let's click on our mask, paint, turn on our color filter to help us see what is on the top layer and what's not. So with our mask selected, I'm going to paint in white. And look, see, it's coming in. Doesn't look great yet, but we can use some blurring to help kind of perfect that. And over here, we've got some messy hair. Paint white over that area too. And there we go. Anything on top here, a little bit of a edge of hair that's I didn't have before. All right, cool. So I'm going to say I'm happy with that. If it looks weird later, we can actually paint brown on top of these gap areas, these kind of white areas, and basically just fill in her hair. We can paint hair in that spot, and it won't look too bad. We'll play with it later. So now probably the hardest part of this, at least I think it is selecting this crazy feather, because the edges are so soft and blurry. It's going to be hard to really retain that detail, because honestly, the pixels of the background are blurred with the pixels of the foreground, and that makes it hard. So let's try selecting the purple first. So with our layer selected, select color range, click on the dark purple, and then hold shift and click on the lighter purple too. Let's see how that does. Oh, that's not good. We need more. We need more. We need a much larger selection than that. Okay, let's go back, select color range, click on the dark purple, click on the lighter purple, and let's up our fuzziness to maybe 82. All right, it's growing a little bit. Again, a lot of trial and error here. Get used to it. A little bit over 100. Still not doing much. Maybe we can do this reverse. Let's try to grab the white background, because the white is pretty consistent, right? The feathers are not very uniform in color. So let's try this. Let's think backwards and select color range here, shift here. And let's do, I think it's less fuzzy. Actually, more fuzzy. We'll grow the selection larger. There we go. Let's see what this looks like. Color filter on, click on your mask, paint with white. Oops. Look at this. We have the background selected. So if you ever have that, if you have your selection backwards, fear not. It is an easy fix. Go up to select and inverse, which reverses your selection, which is shift control I. There we go. Now it's backwards. So we can paint with our white brush, and it brings in whatever is within the selection. Look at this. We also have our yellow. That's kind of nice. Saves us a step. Now this selection is far from perfect, but not bad. We could use our small brush, very soft, so low hardness, and just paint in white. Do some straight lines, shift. Maybe make the brush a little bit bigger. We can kind of manually draw a few little feather things sticking out here if you want to get artistic. And we can paint these in as purple later to make them actually purple. Because right now they're just kind of blurring in with the background of the wall. If this was a 100 megapixel image, it'd be a different story. There'd be a lot more pixels to work with. So to paint those in purple, we're going to select the actual layer, not the mask anymore, but we are going to paint onto the top, the actual layer of the girl. So brush tool, right, go to your color tool, and you can sample from, that purple, and now we can paint on top of her. But this is too hard, right? It's just too fake. So we want to use real subtle. Let's press the number 3 to make this 30% transparent up here, 30%. And now we can kind of layer, maybe make it a little bit brighter. Just around the edges. And then we can use maybe a darker color and paint over that. Layers is the key. If you're a real painter, I think a lot of the detail comes from layering. There we go. Maybe a more saturated from the center. There we go. Not bad. I don't think anyone's going to really zoom in and say those feathers don't look right. Now I use this technique for hair a lot, like down here. We'll fix this hair here. So let me put a solid color actually behind her. Let's use, I don't know, let's do like a blue just so it's different. There we go. That looks pretty bad, right? Now that we have a solid blue color, we can really see that does not look natural. So we can first fill in some of these kind of wispy hairs with a really small white brush, maybe not even at full opacity, maybe 70%. So I've got my mask selected. I'm just going to do some long kind of connecting strokes, right? that. And we're going to fill in where this white kind of like wall background color is coming in. We're going to paint a darker brown to fill in these hairs that we're actually painting in. Do a few crazy hairs there. It's all right. Hair's not perfect. Over here, we also have some pixely gaps that are really hard edged because of our selection. And oh, we're missing part of her ear. Let's fix that. Paint in the top of her ear and then paint out that edge. Oh, this is the background as well. There we go. She's got like a little thing in her hair. Nice. All right. Oh, and this little blob. Okay. Now let's paint. Let's give her some hair color. So select the actual layer. Zoom in. Get your brush tool. Sample brown color. And let's put it maybe at 40% opacity. Let's see what 40% looks like. A little too much. Maybe 20%. And I'll sample from different areas. Don't just use one color and one brush size to do this kind of work. Use the dark areas. Use the, the saturated and the non-saturated. Use a little bit of black too with the dark area. So when I'm sampling colors, there we go. See, we're kind of adding some kind of illusion of shadow. This hair is not always bright. Can have some brighter hairs up here. That's fine. The weaker your opacity, the more your ability to control this kind of stuff is. You can really kind of layer. And I'm at 20% right now, which is pretty good. This bright spot looks weird, so I'm just going to color this in a little bit. Make it a little less distracting. Because when you got one area that really stands out, that's going to draw the viewer's eye to it. And you may not want that. Okay, not bad. Over here, there's a lot of dark hair because of shadows, so don't be afraid to make it match. Oops, I colored over his shirt. Fix that, just paint some yellow back over it. There we go, and there's still some pixely spots in here. I'll do some more white brush strokes in here to smooth out those ugly pixels. Now for the studio backdrop, the one that the mom wanted that she showed me was actually similar to the shirt color. So I'm not sure about that yet, but we can change it by adding hue saturation on top of this. And that means we can change the hue slider, right? And it's non-destructive, which means it's always there. So let's try a beigey yellow, turn the saturation down a little bit, maybe the white up. We don't want her to disappear with her shirt color like that. That's a little bleh. Now it's very flat, so let's add some fake shadow on the back behind. So make a new top layer. Just click that plus button. With our brush tool selected, put your hardness at 0 and your brush size pretty big. We're going to use this to draw like a shadow line. Make sure your color is black. Your foreground color is black. And put your opacity to like 10%. I'm going to click, hold shift, and drag across. And make it a little bit smaller. Click, hold shift, and drag across. What is that doing? It's making a perfectly straight line. Basically a gradient. We're going to blur this in just a second. Don't worry. I know it doesn't look great right now. But when you're using a paper background like this, there is a little bit of shadow along the crease. Okay, so that's our messy hand-drawn shadow. Now let's use some Gaussian blur. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Put it up pretty high. Maybe around like 50-ish. There we go. Now this shadow is its own layer, so we can turn this down. If we don't like it, we can make it a little bit more subtle. So maybe like 30% looks decent. And now under her, she needs some shadows because if she's standing on a studio backdrop, we need some shadows. And looks like I messed up these toes pretty bad. So I'm going to fix these toes real quick. Small brush, hardness up around half. Click on the mask with our black color selected. We can just paint away. Just like that. And over here, paint that away too. And you don't want to get too hard. It's okay if you have a little bit of a black outline like that underneath the sole, because that's what I call a contact shadow. It kind of connects them with the ground below. So we're going to add a fake shadow here in a second. And if you have nothing there, it's going to look a little bad. All right, now let's make a layer underneath her, empty layer. brush, same soft brush, hardness all the way down, size it up. Here's a cool trick. We can squish our brush vertically. We can make it a different shape. Look, now it's an egg, oval. Okay, put our brush opacity around 20 by pressing number 2. You just kind of paint a few little blobs here. And as we paint over itself, it gets darker and darker. So be careful. Imagine her skirt is causing a shadow, right? So you're going to want a big one right around there. And then as you get smaller, it helps you kind of refine where the shadow needs to be. Now you can make it as dark as you want, but just be careful that you don't overdo it. Now it is on its own layer, so we can turn that down. We can control, how bright or dark that is. And then I'll make another layer underneath her to make a real more custom contact shadow. So a little bit less soft, smaller brush, and I'll paint right under the edge of where her shoe is to make my own contact shadow right there. Wherever's touching the ground needs a little shadow line around it. So look, before and after without that, it looks like she's just floating on pixels, and that just kind of connects her with the shadow in the ground, I feel. Cool, we're just about done. If you want to add some texture to your backdrop, like kind of the cloudy thing, you can find a cloud brush or a textured image, and you can layer it on top of the yellow. So I have my own cloud brush that I made, which I actually made from a picture of a cloud. And I'm just going to paint real messy. It has a lot of randomization and jitteriness to it. There we go. And then with that done, we can put this on, maybe like multiply and just turn the opacity down a lot. It kind of makes the background imperfect if that's the look you're going for. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned some of the techniques that I often use for my composites and more detailed editing. Knowing how to remove stuff out of the background is key for using Photoshop to its fullest. And knowing how to make specific selections based on color or brightness or edges is also really important, because that helps you edit and fine-tune specific areas of a photo without touching everything else if you don't want to. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, ask in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe and like this video. Thanks so much and have a great week.